Well, good morning, church family. We are so glad that you guys are here with us this morning. We're going to open up this morning spending some time singing some songs. So if you would stand as we worship here together. I raise a hallelujah in the presence of my enemy. I raise a hallelujah louder than my unbelief. Sing it out, church. I raise a hallelujah. And I raise a hallelujah, and heaven comes to fight for me. And I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm, louder and louder. You're gonna hear my praises, Lord. Up from the ashes, hope will rise. Sing, raise a hallelujah. I raise a hallelujah with everything inside of me. I raise a hallelujah, and I will watch the darkness flee. I raise a hallelujah.
Louder than the unbelief.
Sing a little louder. So why do I sit here and look for mistakes? Find all of my meaning in things that just fade. But you call me your child, no matter my state, and you send your mercy to cover me. Cover me, cover me, to cover me, cover me, to cover me from the storm. Run from the darkness, but can't find the sun. You don't need my perfection, 'cause it's me that you want. You call me your child, no matter my your mercy to cover me, to cover me, to cover me, to cover me, cover me, to cover me from the stones. You cover me. Please send your mercy to cover me and cover me and cover me and cover me, yeah, you cover me from the storms, yeah, you cover me. When I need you, you cover me, oh, you cover me from the storms.
You may be seated. I love this Sunday, the Sunday after Easter. I feel like Easter Sunday is the Sunday when you have all your friends over, all your aunts and uncles, and you have to be on your best behavior. And this Sunday, we just be ourselves. Just go back to being Riverbend. But did you think last Sunday was semi-amazing? I mean, awesome. Awesome. We can have Sundays like that. And if you're here today and you'd like more information about Riverbend, we have this cool thing. It's a QR code that you can just scan that QR code and it will connect you to all of the information that's online. It'll show you how to download the Riverbend Church app. And the app is a handy tool, especially we've got Mother's Day coming up in just a few weeks. And we've got a program where you can buy your mom or your wife a bouquet for Mother's Day. And you can go online, you can do that and purchase that, and we'll have them here on Mother's Day. You can also make a contribution to provide a bouquet, perhaps for, let's say, a single mom or a family that really can't set aside the money for a bouquet. So you can do your Mother's Day preparation online. You can also find out the songs that we have been enjoying during this series. During this series, Hard to Believe, we've had stories from Riverbenders that you've seen on video. We've also had our talented musicians write original songs that complemented each of those stories. And those songs are available on the Riverbend app. You can download them, you can stream them for free, and I would encourage you to do that. There's one more song today that goes with a story from a very courageous young woman named Carrie Villalobos, and she wrote the song that goes with today, and you'll hear that at the end of our time, because we are wrapping up a conversation, a series where we have attempted to ask a very honest question, the question of why is it so hard for us to believe? Why is it so hard for us to believe? And we've been looking at stories from the life of Jesus, and we realized in these stories, these were people who were hanging out with Jesus. They heard him, they saw him, they were around him, they experienced him firsthand, and yet they had a hard time believing. And some of the things that they struggled with, we struggle with, like the story of Nathaniel. Is a story of it's hard for us to believe because we're too close-minded. Or the story of Martha, who found it hard to believe because she was too controlling. Or the story of Judas, who found it hard to believe because he was too confused and even too angry. The story of Peter, who was too ashamed and too proud to find it easy to believe. And the last couple of weeks, we looked at two stories from a man named Thomas, who found it hard to believe because he was overwhelmed with doubt and fear. And the final story we come to today is the story of Peter, and it complements Carissa's story. And it's a story about maybe we have a hard time believing because we have a hard time believing that we are worthy of love. Maybe we have a hard time believing because we don't believe in love. But before we continue, and as we press into this delicate subject, I'd like to pray. Would you pray with me? Father in heaven, I would ask that as we enter into this time together, that we might be renewed and refreshed in our spirit, that you would encourage us and comfort us and challenge us as we consider your great love for us. Pray that we might be lifted up even as we join you today. Draw us near, we ask, for we ask this together in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. And all God's people said, amen.
Amazing love that welcomes me, the kindness and mercy that bought with blood wholeheartedly my soul undeserving. you're so good. And God, you're so good. And God, you're so good. You're so good to
behold the cross, age to age, and hour by hour. The dead are raised, the sinners saved, the work of your power.
God, you're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me. Sing it again. And God, you're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me. I am blessed, I am cold, I am healed, I am whole, I am singing Jesus' name. Highly favored, anointing, filled with your powerful glory. Jesus' name. I am blessed, I am cold, I am healed, I am whole, when we sing Jesus' name. I am blessed, I am anointed, filled with your powerful glory. Jesus' name. And should this life bring suffering, Lord, I will remember what Calvary has bought for me, now and forever. And God, you're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me. And God, you're so good. God, you're so good. God,
hard to believe. Not just that God is good, it was hard for them to believe. It's hard for them to believe that what had just happened. See, they had left everything to follow this young rabbi, and what they had seen over 3 years blew their minds. It's hard to believe that he was healing the blind and the lame were walking, and his teaching was so outrageous, and the crowds were overwhelming. And then, in the midst of what seemed to be this ascending to glorious heights, it all came crashing down. It was destroyed. And they watched the greatest injustice in human history. The only truly righteous man who ever lived was tried and convicted and executed brutally. And they watched him die. And then, the third day, the tomb was empty. And he showed up among them a couple of times, and it was still hard for them to believe. They didn't understand. So in the days following the resurrection, 7 of the disciples said, it's too dangerous for us to stay here. Let's go home. So they went back to northern Israel, to Galilee, and went back to their lives. A number of them went back to fishing. In fact, in the 21st chapter of the Gospel of John, it tells us that they had spent the night fishing when they saw a man standing on the shore, building a fire and cooking breakfast. And they realized it was Jesus. This was the third time they had seen him after the resurrection. And there he was in Galilee, making breakfast for them. They gathered around the fire and they had breakfast together, and I'm not sure what they talked about, but at some point, Jesus called out Peter. We don't know whether he pulled him aside. I think he probably called him out right there in front of the 6 other disciples. And he asked him the most invasive question that one person can ask another, much less if Jesus asks you this question. He asked Peter, in John chapter 21, verse 15, do you love me? Do you love me more than these? And he probably pointed to his friends and to the fishing boats and to the life that he was living. Do you love me more than these? And Peter said, yes, Lord, you know I love you. And Jesus said, feed my lambs. And then he asked him again, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter said, yes, Lord, you know I love you. He said, take care of my sheep. And then the third time he asked him, Simon, son of John, Peter, do you love me? Peter was hurt by this, that he had asked him this third time. And then he says, you know everything. You know that I love you. And Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. If we have the courage today, I want him to ask us that question. Do you love me?
All things have
Do we really? I mean, really? Do we know what it means to love God, to love Jesus? I think that one of the things that makes it hard to believe, and I think it may be the thing that makes it hard for us to believe, is because we're confused about what love really is. This morning, I want to be unusually vulnerable with you. More vulnerable than I am comfortable with. I want to be as transparent as I can and as honest as I can. And I want to share with you something that happened to me this spring, but not this spring, a spring 50 years ago, 1973, in April or May, I'm not exactly sure when it was. In 1973, I was a junior in high school. And I was on my way to, let's just say, manifesting self-destructive behavior in creative ways and making a mess of my life. But in my high school, I kind of knew where I stood. I knew I was at one end of the gene pool, and there were others who were at the other end of the gene pool. And there was this girl, and she was a senior. She was a year ahead of me. And she was from the other end of the gene pool. She was the it girl. You know that girl? I mean, the girl who had all the right friends, all the right clothes. She went to all the right parties. She was dating the captain of the varsity soccer team that I sat at the very end of the bench on. I mean, it was clear to me, and it was clear to anybody with any kind of common sense, that on the social spectrum, she was at the opposite end. And there was no real shot that Dave would ever get to know her or travel in her social circles. But at some time in my junior year, in April or May, and I don't know exactly when it was, of that year, I found out that this it girl had a baby sister. And her younger sister was a sophomore in my high school. And I said, I'll take a run at that. And so I had to find out who she was. And this was back in the day. I realize it's hard for some of you who are younger to understand this, but to meet people, you actually had to see them. You actually had to be in a room with them to say, oh, I met you. And so I had to, in a school of 1,000 kids, I had to find out who this girl's younger sister was. And I saw her. And I went, I'm going for that. But there was a problem, you see. The problem was that I was leaving. At literally the day after school ended, I was going to Spain to study in an advanced Spanish class in Valencia, Spain. And I was going to spend the entire summer in school in Spain. And I knew that I really couldn't work my magic, as it were, in the weeks that we had left before school left out. So I left at the end of May, beginning of June, to go to Valencia. And I spent the summer majoring in sangria and bar fights and paella, in that order. And there was some Spanish in there too, but mostly it was like street level. You learn how to tell people off in Spanish, kind of Spanish. And so I spent the summer doing the things that I did and managed to somehow stay out of jail and came back in September, but I had thought about this girl all summer long. You know how that works. I mean, maybe I'm the only 17-year-old boy who fantasizes about the attractive young girl. And so I had a game plan. When I got back in September, the magic was going to happen. Dave was gonna put on the full court press on this girl. She'd never see it coming. And so I get back to school and I'm trying to find her, and I find her, but something happened to her. You see, while I was in Spain majoring in dumbness and minoring in idiot, she spent the summer on the staff of a Bible camp in upstate New York. And she took this stuff seriously. And so when I finally, got around to making the move, and I said, hey, would you think about going out with me? I got a 1972 Ford Maverick, and it's hot. And she's like, no. And so she kind of stiff-armed me half a dozen times, but I'm stubborn. And I kept after her. And what I know now is she was thinking, I will not be unequally yoked with this idiot. But I kept going, and I kept pressing. And finally she said, I'll go out with you if you come to church with me. Oh, man. I got to go to church with her, and I thought, we'll sit way in the back. We sit in the back pew. We can make out. I could get lucky back there. Nobody will see us. I had been to church. I didn't know how this worked, but I thought there had to be a place where, I could put the move on. And it was just church. And she said, yeah, come to church with my family and I on Sunday night. And I'm like, churches are even open on Sunday night? I never heard of such a thing. And what I came to find out was her family was at church Sunday morning for like 3 or 4 hours, and Sunday nights and Wednesday nights. Her father was the church organist. Her mother was in the choir. This was their thing. And so I go on my first date with her to this little Baptist church. And we walk in. And on the front wall of the church is what I now know is 1 Chronicles 16:24. And it said in bold letters right on the front of the church, declare his name among the heathen. Proclaim his majesty to all nations. And so we sit down and I lean over to her and I say, I suppose I'm one of those heathens, aren't I? And she looks right at me and goes, yes, you are. Now, I wish this story had a happy ending. But the way this story has ended up is that 50 years later, she's still with me. And before you think that's something worth celebrating, you have to realize that she has put up with me for 50 years. But I can tell you for a fact that no one on this earth has taught me more about what love is than that person. And what she taught me love is that love and faith are inseparable. Now, I've been vulnerable with you. Now I need you to be vulnerable with yourselves. Because just as Jesus asked Peter 3 questions, 3 invasive, hard questions, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. And I want you to ask yourself these questions. The first question is, do you know what love is? Do you know what love is? I know we all want to know what love is. I know in 1984 there was a songwriter named Mick Jones who fronted a band called Foreigner. And the #1 song in America in 1984 was, I Want to Know What Love Is. It was 10 years later that question was clearly answered in 1994 by a man named Forrest Gump, who said, I may not be a smart man, but I know what love is. So there is the answer to love, but the reality is we don't have an answer for that question. All of the great philosophers and poets and all of the great writers and musicians throughout human history have speculated about what love is. Lennon, McCartney, the Beatles. John Lennon said that love is the answer. Paul McCartney said, love is all you need. The great English writer Thomas Merton said, love is our true destiny. Alfred Lord Tennyson said, love is the only gold. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow said, love is eternal. John Keats said, love is my religion. Robert Frost, I like this. Love is an irresistible desire to be irresistibly desired. Geoffrey Chaucer was the first one who said, love is blind. Friedrich Nietzsche said, love is blind, but friendship just closes its eyes. Nietzsche. Mae West said, look your best. Who said love is blind? And then that famous poet and philosopher Yogi Berra said, love is the most important thing in the world, but baseball is pretty good too. And the Bible doesn't really help us because the Bible, there's over 200 verses that talk about love. There's a book in the Old Testament called Song of Solomon that's all about the romance. It's a Hebrew Hallmark movie. There's in a chapter, 1 Corinthians 13, that is called the love chapter. In 1 Corinthians 13, it tells us the love is patient and love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not self-seeking. It is not proud. It is not rude. It does not rejoice in injustice, but rejoices in the truth. It goes on, giving us these adjectives for love. The gospel writer who identified himself as the one who Jesus loved, who mentions love more than any other author in the Bible, John, who wrote the Gospel of John in 1st and 2nd and 3rd John and the book of Revelation, in 1 John chapter 4, verse 16, simply says it this way, God is love. Well, that narrows it down, doesn't it? Love is infinite. Love is eternal. Love is transcendent. Love escapes definition, and that's the point. We don't have words. It's a semantic question. The word love, we attach the word love to a great cheeseburger or to a newborn infant. It's the same word. It's a semantic problem. And the problem is that love is an etymological Velcro. Anything you want can stick to it. But that's the point. The point is love is defined by us, for us. Now, the Greeks had a more sophisticated semantic view of love. In the Greek language, there were 3 words that they used to differentiate between 3 different kinds of love. The words eros, phileo, and agape. The word eros is the word from which we get erotic. It means a physical love. It is the physical act of love was termed eros. The word philos is the sort of friendship. It is brotherly love. The city of Philadelphia, Philos Adelphia, is city of brotherly love. Philos Sophia is the love of wisdom. It is a deep affection. It is a contractual relationship. You do for me, and I will do for you. It is fraternal. It is brotherly. It is maternal love. But then there was a category of love in the Greek language called agape. And agape love was this unconditional covenant love. It was a love that said, I will love you even if you never love me. I will love you even if you betray me. I will love you because I choose to love you. In John chapter 21, John chooses his words for love very carefully. And apparently so did Jesus. In John chapter 21 in verse 15, Jesus asks Peter, do you agape me? Do you agapas me? Do you unconditionally love me? And Peter's response is, you know I philo. You know that I really like you. Jesus asks him the second time, do you agape me? Do you love me unconditionally? And Peter says, you know, I philo you. I really like you. I have a great deep fondness for you. And then the third time, he asks Peter, do you philo or do you philes me? Do you like me a lot? He says that Peter was hurt by Jesus asking him this the third time. He said, you know everything. And you know that I think you're swell. I think you're awesome. I think you're amazing. And what we realize in this exchange is that love is what we make of it. Love is ours to design and ours to express. It's ours to define. Love is what you say love is. And the difficult thing for us is we want parameters, But the reality is that God doesn't give us any. Do you know what love is? Yeah, love is beyond definition. It is beyond words. It is something that we have to fashion individually, personally, intimately, that only we can shape. No one can make us love anything. We choose it. So how do you know what love is? The second question, and this is going to be touchy. Ask yourself this. Do you love Jesus? Ooh. Dave, this is Riverbend. We tread lightly around such questions. Do you love Jesus? Yes or no answer would be fine. Do you love Jesus? But it's really not that simple, is it? See, I'm suspicious that we are closer to loving him than we realize. That even the person who thinks that they want nothing to do with who Jesus is actually behaving in a loving way toward him, and they don't even understand it. You see, it's hard for us. It's hard for us to transport ourselves through time, to imagine what the world was like before Jesus got here. To imagine what the world was like before his teaching, before his influence, before the presence of Jesus literally changed human history. What was the world like? Well, what the world was like before that was it was strictly Darwinian. The moral code that everyone operated by before Christ showed up was survival of the fittest. If you're strong enough, then you have a responsibility to take it from the weak. It is in our nature. It is part of the human experience to say only the strong survive. And if I am stronger, I have certain entitlements and responsibilities. And until Jesus came along, the moral codes were ambiguous. And there were some. I mean, there were certainly moral codes in every major religion. All of the ancient, even the ancient sacrificial animistic religions had some version of the golden rule. Love your neighbor as you love yourself, or do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But those are essentially self-serving. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you is like, I'll be nice to you so you don't kill me. It was when Jesus came along that this idea of sacrificial love, this idea of giving ourselves for someone else only existed in one place in humanity, and it was the relationship between a mother and her child. It was a mother's love for a child that began to express that unconditional sacrificial love. But it was Jesus who came and said, you don't have to have physical children to manifest and to experience this kind of unconditional love. This kind of love can exist, and you can choose it, and you can find it, and you can show it. You see, I think we're closer than we realize, because when we operate in forgiveness, when we operate in grace, when we operate in mercy, we are operating in a 2,000-year tradition of a culture that has been so immersed and transformed by the influence of the teaching of this one person that we don't even realize that we exist as a human race. We probably only have survived because of the ethic that he introduced into humanity. And so we are operating even in our unawareness with a sense of what it means to know and to show the love of Jesus. I think we get a clue to this in verse 17 of John chapter 21. Because if you look at it closely, in verse 17, Jesus changes what he asked Peter. In verses 15 and 16, he says to Peter, do you agapos? Do you agape me? And Peter says, no, I'm really fond of you. I philase you. I philo you. But when he gets to verse 17, Jesus changes what he asks. And he asks, do you philase me? Do you really like me? Literally what he is asking is, do you even really like me? And that's why it says that Peter was hurt. Because it doesn't say that Peter was hurt because he asked him a third time, just a third question. It says that he was hurt because he asked him, do you philes me? Do you really just like me? Peter got it. And even then, he says, Lord, you know everything. You know that I think you're swell. I think you're awesome. You're the cat's meow, the cat's pajamas. You're the dude. I really like you. You know what doesn't happen there? Jesus doesn't fold his arms and go, seriously? This is the best you got? I just went to the cross for you. Did you see anything that happened over the last 3 years? I raised from the dead, and I'm making you breakfast on the shore of the Sea of Galilee after I died. And the best you got is you think I'm the cat's pajamas? You think I'm a swell guy? Really? He doesn't say that. He simply says, I'll take you where you are. That's good enough for me. That's where we can start. Don't underestimate what it means to love Jesus, because what it means to love Jesus means that we are actually willing to admit that we are worthy of that love, that we can receive that love. And that's why it's hard to believe. First question is, do you know what love is? The second question is, do you love Jesus? The third question is, would you know love if you saw it? Do you know what love really looks like? It manifests itself in different ways, in different situations, in different relationships. The nuances of love are virtually infinite. But Jesus gives us a clue about the core value of what true love looks like. And it's in each verse. In verse 15, after he asks Peter if he loves him, Peter says, you know I really like you. He says, feed my lambs. And then in verse 16, he says, do you love me? He says, you know I really like you. And he says, take care of my sheep. And in verse 17, he says, do you even really like me? You know I really like you. And he says, feed my sheep. And in these verses, there are 4 different words that Jesus uses in different combinations. The first word is the word bosque. It occurs in verse 15 and verse 17. And it's the word for feed, but it's an uncommon word. And what it means is it is the work of a shepherd that allows the sheep to graze freely. Bosque means to allow to graze. You understand what that imagery is? When he says, allow my sheep to graze, it's almost as if he's telling us to be gracious. It's almost as if he's telling us, you know what grace is? Grace is allowing people to find their own way. Lead them to where the water is. Lead them to where the grass is, but it's up to them to eat. They have to find it on their own. How do you feed sheep? You don't shove food down their throat. You lead them to a pasture. You lead them beside still water. That's what it means. It's what love looks like. Love looks like grace that says, you can find your own way and I will walk with you. The second word is the word for take care of. Take care of my sheep. And this is the word promania. And this and promane. And promane is the classic word for shepherd. A promane is someone who watches over sheep. And what does a shepherd do? A shepherd guides the sheep. A shepherd leads the sheep. A shepherd takes care of the sheep. A shepherd protects the sheep. What does love look like? Love looks like I'm going to guide you. I'm going to lead you. I'm going to invest in you. I'm going to watch over you. I'm going to protect you. And then there's 2 words for sheep. The first one in verse 15 is arnia. And arnia is the word for lamb. It's the little lamb. It's the word for the infant sheep, for the cute little adorable, loving little baby sheep that is a sheep nugget for a wolf. And what I think love does is love says you protect the vulnerable. Love cares for the vulnerable. It cares for the weak. It cares for those that are at risk. That's what love looks like. It cares for the arnia. It cares for the innocent little lambs. But it also cares for the probata in verses 16 and 17. It's literally the word for livestock. It can mean sheep, it can mean goats, it can mean cows, it can mean cattle. It can mean any kind of domesticated animal. So it's the mature and it's the established, it's the independent and the strong. Love cares for them too. It cares for the ones that don't think they need to be cared for. It's cared for the ones that smell terrible. It's cared for the ones that are belligerent. It's caring for the old goats. You know, if I've learned anything in 40 years of doing this, I've learned that sheep bite and sheep smell. But what love does is love cares for those around us anyway. You see, the beauty of what he's painting this picture is that we know love when we show love. We know it when we see it, and we know it when we do it. When we allow those around us to grow, to find their own way, to graze, when we protect them and watch over them and guide them and encourage them, whether they are weak or whether they are strong. This is what love looks like. So ask yourself these 3 questions. Do I know what love is? Do I love Jesus? And would I know love if I saw it? Because I think that one of the greatest hindrances to understanding love, or one of the greatest hindrances to understanding faith, is because we don't understand love. And it's tough to pin down. I mean, I found a quote from Plato. This is what Plato said: "Love is a serious mental disease." That's optimistic. I like what Buckminster Fuller said. Buckminster Fuller said, "Love is metaphysical gravity." It's good. H.L. Mencken said, "Love is the triumph of imagination over intelligence." But it was Martin Luther King who put it this way: "Love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend." It was 50 years ago this spring that I found out that the it girl in my school had a baby sister, and that I wanted to make a run at that. And I did. And I chased her for 6 years. She has a strong will. But the 44 years that we have spent married and the 50 years that I have spent knowing her, I can honestly tell you that there is no human being on this planet who has taught me more about what love is. And above all else, she has taught me that love and faith are inseparable, because you cannot love someone you don't believe in. And when you believe in someone, you are granting them the highest expression of your love. When Jesus cornered Peter on the shore of the Sea of Galilee after he had been raised from the dead, and in front of the 6 other disciples, and asked him if he loved him, you know what he doesn't say? He doesn't say, "Do you believe in me?" He says, "Do you love me?" Because those things are the same. You see, I think the reason that it's hard to believe is because we don't see ourselves as worthy of love. We don't see ourselves as lovable. And the greatest hindrance to what love is and what faith is understanding how greatly you are loved. That may be hard to believe, but you can love this.
Growing up was really hard. I grew up basically with nothing really. I was adopted when I was 3 months old with 6 of my siblings. My biological parents just gave me up. It was really hard growing up, like nobody really wanted me, in a way, abandoned. My mom and my dad, that I call my parents, adopted me and my sisters. I don't even know why. A lot of people say it was just for the money or just because, but my dad is my best friend, really. He was the one person that showed me what true love is and what it should be. My mom was never there for me. She showed me what hatred is like and made me hate myself as a person growing up. Growing up this way was really, really hard, especially because I started hating myself as a person, started self-harming, and started never wanting to be in the world. We grew up being Catholic, forced being Catholic. We never got to say what we wanted to or what we wanted to be. We just had to be Catholic. It wasn't our choice. Secretly, I started going to a Christian church behind my mom's back, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I kind of started finding God in a way and His love in a way, what He had for me. And it was really, really hard. But, I knew that He was there, but I didn't want to believe it. Still, I didn't want to believe that He was real, so I kept pushing it away, pushing Him away. And I ended up being taken away from my parents when I was 15. That was the hardest day of my life. I no longer wanted to be in the world because I kept asking God that if you are real, why me? Out of anybody in the world, why? When we got taken away from my parents, I ended up getting placed with my sister. And when I got placed with my sister, it was really, really hard for her. She was only 21 and having to take care of 2 teenage girls, and I felt really bad. I felt like everything was my fault, and I started self-harming really bad, getting placed in facilities again and again for months. Throughout that time, I felt alone, scared, and abandoned, and I just had so much darkness. I could just feel it around me. And I knew that I had to reach out to Him, but I didn't want to. I don't know what was holding me back. Maybe all the guilt. I ended up getting a call from my caseworker telling me that I wasn't going to get to go home to my sister anymore. That day I broke down really, really bad. I got placed in Houston, and when I went to Houston, I was so isolated from everyone and from the world until I started going to school. And it was pretty good. And I can't begin to explain how grateful I was for that because I ended up meeting a teacher, and she was really, really faith-based. She would always tell me if she believed she could, then she did, and that always stuck. They moved all of us from Houston. I moved to Austin, and I've been in Austin for 3 years now. And here in Austin is when I came to Riverbend. And there was this specific song y'all played, and I just started crying to, and I just surrendered to. I just kind of told Him, I'm giving everything to you because I can't. You're the one that will take my burden. My life is different now knowing that I have God, because every time I'm back in that dark place, all I have to do is talk to Him. And I know it is so hard. It is so hard, and there's so much evil in the world. And I would always ask myself, why? Why, God, why? But God isn't the one that does the evil. God isn't the one that makes us go through other dark things. But He always has a plan for us. He has written our story from beginning to end. And all I can say is just don't let go of hope, because He knows your story.
My internal clock is slowly running out now. I have lived my life in fear of not knowing anything terrified I might give up on this life. I surrender, I surrender. Give it to you, it's out of my control. I surrender, I surrender. I'm trusting your love is more powerful than my own. I surrender. For you have written this life for me so I can move on. Here before you on my knees, not knowing anything at all. Teach me how to shine your light. Promise I'll try, 'cause I'm a firefly. Show me your way, shine your light on the path you've made. You know my heart is heavy from all these mistakes. I surrender, I surrender. Knowing it's not the end, it's gonna be okay. I surrender, I surrender. Today will be the day, no need to pray. 'Cause I surrender, I surrender. I surrender, I surrender. Knowing it's not the end, it's gonna be okay. I surrender, I surrender. Today will be the day, no need to pray. I surrender, I surrender. I surrender. All to thee, my blessed Savior, I surrender. I surrender. I surrender. All to thee, my blessed Savior, I surrender. I surrender. I surrender. Oh, to thee, my blessed Savior, I surrender.
Would you show your appreciation? Thank you for yourself. Thank you for. Thanks for being here. See you next Sunday. Have a great week. Go in peace.